appear in any of the papers.
It's my understanding that the witnesses will testify that they, in fact, did inform the defendant of his right to refuse, although it's not memorialized in the report. I didn't receive any factual allegations from the defendant indicating that he was going to deny that that occurred. But that's
let's assume that that's the case. And let's assume for purposes of argument that that's the case. Don't we still have the issue with respect to whether this is a pre-LARC or post-LARC case?
Not necessarily, in the sense of if the defendant consented to a credential search, then the issue is whether or not it was limited in scope. I don't think LARC actually affects consent. Now, Cardi, the other decision from Judge Pressler, may affect whether or not there's an articulable suspicion to request consent. Obviously, that decision also postdates this, but if Your Honor were to find that there was not a valid consent given, then clearly the LARC question becomes dispositive. If Your Honor were to find that consent was given, I'm not necessarily sure LARC would be dispositive. So I think a valid consent would moot the LARC issue.
How many witnesses do you propose having?
We have two, Judge. They're both here.
Right. Mr. Soobzokov, did you want to be heard on those that limited issue?
Not at this time, Judge, but there's also another factual issue with regard to, since Your Honor is going to entertain the motor vehicle summonses, there's also going to be some factual issues regarding that. Whether or not the refusal was justified or what was the basis for the refusal. Those are issues that should come out today, too.
Do you have testimony in that regard? I was unaware that I was going to be dealing with...
Judge, we indicated that we would be trying the disorderly persons offenses at the time of trial. The motion to suppress was limited to the physical evidence. If Your Honor suppresses the physical evidence of the drug case, then we no longer have jurisdiction. We'd remand the case back to municipal court for disposal of disorderly persons offenses. If Your Honor was to act as the fact finder at trial, obviously we'd have both, but we're not prepared to go forward as to the refusal aspect of it.
What are the issues on refusal, Mr. Soobzokov?
Our position is there's no probable cause to have him take the breathalyzer at all. According to the statute, there has to be a basis for you to give someone a breathalyzer. And from what I saw in the reports here, there's no basis for that.
Okay. I didn't realize that I was dealing with that issue today, and the state hasn't addressed it in their briefs at all.
That's fine, then I'm going to have to test that issue.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying with respect to the DWI refusal, but it's nothing, none of that is before me. I didn't hear any, I have not heard any arguments in that respect, and your briefs didn't deal with that either, right? I don't have any papers in that regard. So what I would suggest is we go forward with the motion to suppress, and depending upon the outcome of that, then we'll see what occurs with respect to the motor vehicle violations.
Judge, there was also a part of my motion dealt with the dismissal of the indictment, and I understand the detective who testified at the grand jury is not going to be called today. Is that correct?
Judge, on a motion to dismiss the indictment, it's what the minutes are before the court. There is no factual issues regarding that.
No fact. I mean, that's based on the grand jury testimony.
Yeah, but our position was, within the brief, is that what was testified to by the detective from the prosecutor's office, Mr. Potter, was not consistent with what was written on the affidavit that was submitted or read into the record.
I understand, and I have that affidavit. Correct?
You don't want to hear any argument from detective?
Well, I'm going to assume I don't think there's a factual issue in that. I'm going to assume for purposes of the motion to dismiss that your argument is that he misrepresented whether or not Mr. Albuet had exclusive control of the car, of the automobile, based upon the affidavit from the corporate owner, I take it.
Yes, Judge.
Corporate owner representative, as to his use of the automobile, which wasn't presented at grand jury, correct?
Well, he read something into the record which was not consistent with the affidavit that was prepared by the defendant's employer. he indicated in grand jury in his testimony that the defendant had exclusive custody, control, use of the automobile.
Right.
The affidavit does not say that.
I understand. So for purposes of your argument, I'm going to assume that what's said in the grand jury transcript, we know, that's what was testified to, and we have the affidavit. So you can make your arguments in that regard. What would be the factual, what testimony would we need?
Well, we could ask the Detective Potter if he was mistaken in what he told the people in the grand jury. Because you could look at this affidavit here, it does not say what he claims it says.
I see no,
Judge,
you want to be heard on that issue?
My understanding on a motion to dismiss, I am bound by the presentation to the grand jury,
Right.
and
I really see no reason to do that. Your arguments are clear before the court as to respecting the fact that he was asked the direct question, did he have exclusive control of the automobile, and he answered, yes, he did. And then you're presenting an affidavit from the corporate owner saying, look, he didn't have exclusive ownership of the automobile.
Words to that effect, yes, Judge.
Yeah. So that the officer misrepresented the exclusive use of the automobile issue. And why don't we deal, since we're talking about it, why don't I hear the motion to dismiss, and then we'll proceed with the motion to suppress if necessary. So why don't you further articulate any arguments you wish to with respect to the motion to dismiss?
Well, Judge, I indicated everything I basically had to say that's on the papers. And I would think that it would be more appropriate, Your Honor, if the individual who wrote the affidavit was presented before the grand jury. He's only located in Livingston. He's not located a tremendous distance away. And I think case law says that basically you should present the witnesses who are available to testify as to these facts. And if you want, this affidavit, by the way, was given to me by the state in support of their indictment. And in light of the fact that Mr. Natoli was not allowed to testify, we're using really hearsay testimony and inaccurate hearsay testimony to support the allegation that the defendant had exclusive use of the car. And I think on a constructive possession case, it is very important to know these factual scenarios to support or dispute whether or not the possession charge on the constructive theory could be found. And if he did not say what was said on the indictment, that's not truthful. In light of that, I think, all due respect, I think we should throw this indictment right out.
All right. State wish to be heard on that issue?
just briefly, Judge, the state only has a burden of making out a prima facie case before the grand jury. The affidavit that's being referred to, it should be clear, was not introduced into evidence in the grand jury, and it was not read to the grand jury. That's clear from the grand jury minutes, although it's referred to in one of the questions that I posed to Detective Potter. I think, first of all, it's a fair paraphrase of the substance of the affidavit, but even if you decide it's not an accurate paraphrase, the constructive possession I submit was made out solely from Patrolman Soul's testimony that the narcotics in question were recovered in the center console in a clear bag directly beneath the wallet of the defendant. I think that implies the wallet was placed there while the items were there, or at least it's a reasonable inference the grand jury could have drawn. So even setting aside any issues regarding the affidavit, a prima facie case was made out just from Patrolman Soul's testimony. Be that it is made, Judge, also, the state has no burden of presenting exculpatory evidence under State versus Hogan unless it's clearly exculpatory. And I don't think there's any reading of the affidavit in question, which has been submitted as part of my papers, and I would incorporate that affidavit into my argument, that rose to the level of requiring a due process obligation of the state to introduce exculpatory evidence. The short answer is, Judge, it was paraphrased before the grand jury, and even if you decide that it was an inartful paraphrase, there was more than sufficient evidence from Patrolman Souls to justify this indictment.
All right.
But Judge, Patrolman Souls talked about the fact that he found allegedly found the CDS in the console of the car. But then when there was testimony from the detective, he said that the car was owned by the defendant's employer. And then when he went on to say that the defendant himself had exclusive use of this car, what else is the grand jury to do? Sure, they're going to return an indictment.
All right, thank you. The grand jury testimony here indicates that on page 7, question was asked, and what information did you receive from Mr. Natoli regarding an automobile that was driven by Mr. Albut on the date in question, which was August 7th, 1999. That question, followed questioning that had been undertaken with respect to the officer, where the officer had indicated that in conducting the search, that he lifted up the console and there was a wallet. There was a wallet right on top of the console. I picked up the wallet, and underneath the wallet was 2 plastic bags, one of them containing a small green vegetation and the other containing 6 other little bags containing white powder. And that was identified as a controlled dangerous substance. This is on page 5. So first, we have to put the entire grand jury testimony in its context with respect to issues raised by the defense that there was a misrepresentation here. As the state has pointed out, search here indicated that Mr. Albut's wallet was found on top of what has been identified as controlled dangerous substances. And in addition, at page 7, there is the reference to Mr. Natoli stating that Mr. Albut was an employee with Wigner, that has been an employee for about 20 years, and that one of the benefits of his employment was that he was allowed to use this particular automobile, and that he uses it to drive back and forth to work on a regular basis. And it is in that context that the question was then asked, and did they indicate whether he had sole and exclusive use of the automobile? And it stated that, in answer, that it does state that, yes. Well, it's true, the affidavit does not state that as presented as an exhibit to the court, but I do not find that there's any material misrepresentation in that statement, as it indicates that the automobile was used by Mr. Albut on a regular basis, and that the automobile was utilized by him for transportation to and from work as a prerequisite of his employment. So there is no question that he certainly had the use of the automobile, and that the automobile was in his possession, in his control, at the time of the stop, and his wallet was found in the center console. And as indicated by the state in State v. Hogan, with respect to exculpatory evidence centered on any misrepresentations, in this case, that it has to be clearly exculpatory, and I do not find that it is here. And secondly, it has to directly negate guilt, and there is no indication here that the statement about exclusive use in any way directly negates guilt in that regard. And we cannot lose sight of the fact that we have to look at the entire grand jury testimony, not just one portion of it. And secondly, that we're talking about probable cause with respect to a charge. The grand jury is an accusatory body as to whether or not the state has made out prima facie facts for a charge. It is not a body that decides merits with respect to jury issues concerning constructive possession. Accordingly, the motion to dismiss is denied. Now, having said that, with respect to the motion to suppress, if you have your officers here, unless either side wishes to present any opening arguments to me, we can proceed with that testimony.
I'm prepared to just call witnesses.
Same here, Your Honor.
All right.
State of New Jersey calls Patrolman Robert Findora.
Okay. Gentlemen, step right up here. We'll administer the oath to you before you sit.
Please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. You do swear in the presence of Almighty God that the testimony you're about to give to the court in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
First name is Robert. My last name is Findura. F as in Frank. I-N-D-U-R-A. Junior.
All right, can I have a seat, sir? You may proceed, Mr. McNamara.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, officer. I'd ask you to keep your voice up. This is a taped courtroom, so
Yes.
make sure the tape system picks it up.
Okay.
By whom are you currently employed,
The Borough of Butler,
and in what capacity?
as a patrolman.
How long have you been a police officer for the Borough of Butler?
A little over 5.5 years.
And what generally have your assignments been in that time?
Patrol division, traffic, community policing.
Did you receive any training or in the recognition of packaging of controlled dangerous substances?
Just from my experiences, yes.
Have you been involved in arrests for controlled dangerous substances?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many?
About a dozen.
Have you been involved in any investigations regarding driving while intoxicated?
Yes, I have.
And approximately how many investigations of driving while intoxicated would you say you've been involved in?
A few dozen.
Directing your attention to August 7th of 1999 at approximately 9:22 in the evening, were you working on that date and at that time?
Yes, I was.
And what capacity were you working? Were you in plain clothes or were you in uniform?
Uniform.
And were you in a marked police car?
Fully marked police car, yes.
And where were you located?
I was on Route 23.
Did you observe an automobile commit a traffic infraction at that time?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court what happened?
I was sitting in the parking lot of the Meadtown Shopping Center, which lies on Route 23 South in Butler. I observed a vehicle make a left-hand turn from Keel Avenue onto Route 23 southbound, which is improper left turn. There's no left-hand turn at that intersection.
Is that information posted?
Yes, it is.
And in what manner is it posted?
Lane markings, no left turn signs, approximately 6 to 8 signs that direct cars to proceed across the highway to make a left or a U-turn.
So the left that was made went across the northbound lane into the southbound lane to make a left-hand turn.
Yes.
Now, what did you do when you observed, excuse me, can you describe the car that you observed?
It was a 1995 Chevy, two-door black.
When you first observed it, could you tell how many occupants were in the car?
No, I could not.
What, if anything, did you do with your car after observing the illegal left-hand turn?
I proceeded to pull out into the highway, get behind the vehicle, and activate my emergency lights.
What did the car do in response to you activating your lights?
The vehicle made a right-hand turn off the highway into the parking lot of Reserne's liquor store.
And that's R-O-S-E-R-N-E?
Apostrophe yes, yes.
At that point, could you tell how many occupants were in the car?
Yes,
How many were in there?
there was one.
What did you do after the car pulled into the parking lot of the liquor store?
I called my dispatcher to advise them I was making a motor vehicle stop. At that time, the driver exited his vehicle. I opened my door, instructed him to get back into his car, proceeded to call the play out to my dispatcher, and then proceeded to the car.
Can you describe the man that got out of the car?
Sitting right there.
When you say right there, can you identify him by an article of clothing?
Bowling, dark sweater, mustache,
Indicating
We'll note that.
to the right of the attorney.
Now, when the defendant got out of his car, you indicated you ordered him back into his car. At that particular point, what were you investigating?
Motor vehicle violation.
and you indicated that you called in the license plate to the dispatch. Did you receive any information regarding the license plate, whether or not it was a stolen car, or whether or not it was a wanted vehicle, or anything
No.
of that nature? Did you approach the car?
Yes, I did.
Which side did you approach it?
Driver's side.
Did you have your weapon drawn?
No.
What did you do when you approached the driver?
I asked the driver for his driver credentials.
Did he comply?
He did, he produced the registration for the vehicle. He could not produce a driver's license.
Did you ask him if he was a licensed driver?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, did he respond to you?
Said he was, and then proceeded to ask him for the proper spelling of his full name and his proper date of birth.
And what was the spelling that he originally provided to you?
Gave me a first name of Kamal with a K, E-M-A-L, last name Albut, A-L-B-U-T, with date of birth of 3/29/1953.
Did you later learn in the course of the investigation that the defendant's driver's license was under the name of Samal, or even if it's pronounced Kamal, but it was spelled with the first letter C as in Charlie?
Yes, with a different date of birth.
But did you ask him to spell his name prior to you checking?
Yes, I did.
And what spelling did he give you specifically?
With the K, E-M-A-L.
What did you do with that information?
Went back to my patrol vehicle, called my dispatcher to have the information run through motor vehicle.
Now, when you say you went back to your vehicle, do you have radio contact with the Butler, is that the Borough Butler Police Dispatcher?
There's 6 towns on our frequency.
And the dispatcher that you were dealing with, do you know, or are you familiar with whether or not they have a computer link with the Division of Motor Vehicles that
Yes.
maintains driver's records?
Yes, they do.
Did you receive information from dispatch based upon their computer run of whether or not there was any driving history for a Kamal Albert with a K?
There was not.
When did you learn that information?
When
After,
dispatcher called me back and advised me there was no match in motor vehicle with that name and that date of birth.
and where were you specifically when you received that information?
Sitting in my patrol vehicle.
And where was the defendant?
Sitting in his vehicle.
Did there come a time when other police officers from Butler arrived?
Not for a while after that.
You have the information that there was no record of a driver's license prior to other police officers arriving, or after they arrived?
Well, I proceeded back to the vehicle to speak with the driver to inform him that the name did not match any driver's license in New Jersey with that name and date of birth.
At that point, just focusing on that
Okay.
particular point, were there any other police officers
No.
present at that point? Did there come a time when Patrolman Souls arrived?
Yes,
And this was after you had already received the information from your dispatch?
yes.
Where was the defendant when Patrolman Souls arrived?
Sitting in the driver's seat of his vehicle.
Had you ordered him out of the car at that point?
No,
Had you drawn your weapon at that point?
no, I did not.
Were you speaking with him?
Yes, I was.
Can you describe the general nature of the conversation that you were having with the defendant at that time?
I informed him that the name and date of birth that he gave me did not match, and if he could produce any form of ID.
And what, if anything, did he say?
He said that he did not have any other form of ID other than the registration for the vehicle.
During the course of this conversation with the defendant, was his window open?
Yes, it was.
What, if anything, did you detect in the emanating from the defendant?
I detected an odor of an alcoholic beverage coming from his breath.
Did you inquire as to the source of that odor?
Yes, I'd asked him if he had been drinking.
And what did he respond?
He said that he had a few.
Is this before or after you received the information from dispatch that his driver's license information was not
This is after.
complete? Excuse me.
After.
At some point, did Patrolman Souls arrive?
Yes, you did.
Did you, after Patrolman Souls arrived, did you give any orders to the defendant at that time?
No, did not.
Did you ask him to step out of the car?
No.
Where were you when you were you continuing to speak with the defendant?
Yes.
Where were you physically located?
At the driver's side window.
Where was Patrolman Souls?
He had walked around the passenger side window.
Was he also having conversation with the defendant?
Yes, he was.
At some point, did you observe Patrolman Souls go into the car?
Not at that time, no.
At some point, however, did Patrolman
Yes, he
Sauls
did,
go into the car?
yes.
When Patrolman Sauls entered the car, where were you?
I was standing to the rear of the vehicle with the driver.
Meaning the defendant.
Yes,
When you say the rear of the vehicle that the defendant was driving?
yes.
Could you describe the approximate size of the car? Was it a mid-size, a compact?
Just two-door, mid-size.
How far away would you say you were from the front seat when you were standing with the defendant at the rear of the car?
Approximately 5 to 6 feet.
When Patrolman Sauls entered the car, was the defendant handcuffed?
No, he was not.
Did you have your weapon drawn?
No, I did not.
You indicated this occurred on Route 23, is that correct?
Yes,
Did you notice there was any traffic in the area?
yes.
In your experience, is that highway traffic at that particular point of Route 23?
Yes,
Was the liquor store still open?
yes, it was.
Now, at some point, did Patrolman Sauls inform you that he had recovered something from inside the car?
Yes, he did.
What did he tell you he recovered?
He had said to me he had cocaine.
At that point, what did you do?
I handcuffed the defendant.
Had you handcuffed him prior to the discovery of the cocaine?
No,
While you were speaking with him at the rear of the car, could you also detect the odor of alcohol at that point?
yes,
Did Patrolman Sauls find any open containers of alcohol in the car?
yes, he did.
What did he find?
He found 1 can of Heineken.
Did you observe that yourself as
Yes,
well?
I did.
Where was the defendant when the can of Heineken was recovered?
I believe we were still standing at the rear of the vehicle.
At what point was the defendant put in your vehicle, or Patrolman Sauls' vehicle, or another Butler Police Department vehicle?
He was put in the rear seat of my patrol vehicle after the cocaine and marijuana were found in the console.
Approximately what was the time that had elapsed from the first time you observed the defendant make the illegal left-hand turn until the cocaine was discovered? What would the time frame be, would you say?
I can give an approximate time of 20 to 25 minutes.
During the time that you were on the side of the road, during the time of that 20 to 25 minutes, did you discuss other matters with the defendant?
I don't recall what else.
Was Patrolman Sauls speaking with him?
When we were both at the vehicle, yes.
I have no further questions for this witness, Judge.
All right. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge. At the time you stopped the defendant, what were the traffic conditions?
Light, clear.
There wasn't much traffic?
It was a Friday, I believe it was a Friday night. Route 23 always has traffic all hours of the night.
You consider it to be light?
According to my summons, the traffic was medium.
Did the manner in which the defendant drove his vehicle create any danger to anyone?
Other than making the left-hand turn, no.
So the basis of the stop was because of that turn.
Left-hand turn, yes.
And I believe you testified earlier there was a sign indicating you cannot make a left-hand turn?
There are quite a few, yes.
Where are those signs located?
There's one above every single traffic signal. There are also, I believe, 3 on the right-hand side of the road, and there was also arrows, lane marking, directing the traffic to proceed straight across the highway.
So back in August '99, was that a new change to the traffic pattern there, or was that in existence for a while?
It was there for about a year and 2 months.
Prior to that stop?
Yes.
Did the defendant tell you he did not have a driver's license?
Not on him, yes.
His response was not on him?
Not on him, yes.
And the name and the date of birth that he gave you, when you received your response from dispatch, did they tell you there were any warrants outstanding for that individual?
No, they did not.
So there was no reason to arrest the defendant at that point, correct?
Objection,
Correct.
Judge. Objection, it's for the court to determine, not the witness.
Well, he's answered the question, so we'll just continue.
When you returned to the vehicle, to the defendant's vehicle, is that when you asked him for identification?
I informed him what had come back from motor vehicle, and I asked him if he had any other forms of ID on him.
And what was his response?
He said no.
By the way, did Patrolman Souls hear this conversation?
No, he did not.
So what was the basis for you asking the defendant to remove himself from the vehicle?
After Patrolman Souls had arrived, Patrolman Souls asked the defendant through the passenger side window if he could look through the vehicle for any forms of ID. At that time, the defendant said yes. I then asked the defendant to step out of the vehicle.
So, Patrolman Souls was at the passenger side of the vehicle.
Yes.
The defendant was sitting inside the vehicle.
Driver's seat, yes.
And you were to the driver's window.
Yes.
And Patrolman Souls asked the defendant if he could look through his car.
Look for identification, yes.
The defendant said he didn't have any.
That's what he had told me, yes.
And Patrolman Souls heard that.
No, he did not.
When did he come to the scene?
After the second time I approached the vehicle to ask for any other forms of ID, that's when Patrolman Souls had come to the passenger side window.
So he heard it.
In the course of our conversation, he may have heard.
But he still asked him to look for
Yes, he
into his
did.
car.
Yes.
And at that point, you asked the defendant to remove himself from the vehicle.
Yes.
And at that point, the reason for that was that he didn't have a driver license in his possession?
Yes, and also because Patrolman Souls was going to go into the vehicle.
When you initially approached the defendant, or the second time you came back to his automobile, and you found out what dispatch told you, did you see any type of contraband within his vehicle?
No.
So again, when Patrolman Souls arrived, there was no reason to arrest the defendant, correct?
Objection, Judge. Same objection.
I'll ask you to, it's been asked and answered, so I'll ask you to move on.
I didn't ask that specific question, Your Honor, before.
Well, what's the relevance of that?
I don't know why the basis for the arrest was. When he arrested him, why?
Judge, once again, under Bruzes, it's for Your Honor to determine if probable cause existed. The subjective intentions of the officers is irrelevant to what this court has to determine.
I just don't find it relevant because that's what we're here for, to make the determination.
Okay, so it wasn't until Patrolman Souls conducted this search and allegedly found this contraband, that's when you arrested the defendant, right?
Yes.
That's the only reason.
At that time, yes.
What did the defendant say when he was asked to have his car searched?
I believe he gave consent to Patrolman Souls.
You're not sure?
Like I said, I was standing at the driver's side door, Patrolman Souls on the passenger side, speaking to the defendant through the car.
So you didn't hear the response?
I did not hear every word that was spoken between them, no.
So you don't know anything about the consent issue, do you? You don't know whether or not he consented to the search, do you?
I don't know, no.
You were right there, though.
Yes, I was.
When did you prepare your report?
August 8th.
What time? Was it early in the morning, late at night?
I don't recall the exact time.
Was it close to the time of the stop and the arrest?
Yes.
Did you consult with Officer Sauls when you prepared your report?
No, I did not.
So when you took the defendant out of his vehicle, put him back of his car, standing in the back of his car, where was Patrolman Sauls?
At the passenger side door.
Still standing there?
Now, once the defendant was removed from the vehicle, he then went into the vehicle.
You asked him to come out of the car, right?
Yes.
And what was the reason for that?
So Patrolman Souls could enter the vehicle.
But you didn't hear him say that he wanted to look through the car, did you?
Yes, I heard Patrolman Souls ask him, that's in my report, that if he could look in the vehicle for identification. The defendant said yes, he could.
Didn't you just testify you didn't hear anything? 2 minutes ago?
Objection, Judge, that wasn't the testimony. We're going to talk about specific time and specific snippets of
Overall.
conversation.
Overall, you can answer that question.
Answer the question, please.
I believe I did, yes.
You believe you did what? You're confusing me, I'm sorry.
That I believe that I did not hear the defendant give consent. Looking at my report, which is in front of me, he did give consent.
Are you sure or you're not sure, officer?
Yes.
Yes what?
I'm sure that he gave consent according to my report, yes.
You don't know when you prepared your report, do you?
On August 8th.
You don't know what time, do you?
Not the exact time, no.
And you don't know if you consulted with Patrolman Souls
I have
before you...
not consulted him,
How did he ask him a question, if he could search the car? What were the words he used?
no. I don't know the exact wording that was used. I don't recall.
You want to look at your report?
I don't have the exact wording in there now.
Do you recall hearing Patrolman Souls advising the defendant that he had the right to refuse?
I don't recall now.
You don't recall that either?
No.
How soon after you were informed that Patrolman Souls discovered the contraband, how soon after that did the K-9 unit arrive?
I don't have the exact time that they had arrived on scene.
You have any idea?
45 minutes to an hour.
Where were they coming from?
I believe Morristown.
And how far is Morristown from where you were?
I'm just going to object. The K-9 unit came after the contraband was recovered. The state doesn't intend to introduce any information at trial regarding any K-9 searches or anything that the dogs did. It's beyond the scope of the hearing that this court must address, but just in the interest of saving some
Get
time.
much more on this line?
No, Judge. You know when they arrived?
I don't recall. Our dispatcher calls the comm center. The comm center in turn dispatches the sheriff's department.
Okay. Do you know if the K-9 unit discovered any other contraband in the car?
Nothing else was found, no.
And where was the defendant while you were waiting for the unit to arrive?
The sheriff's officer,
Yes, sir.
he was seen in the backseat of my patrol car.
Was he cuffed?
Yes, he was.
And after they finished what they did, you took him to headquarters?
Yes.
At headquarters, did you take any videotape of the defendant?
Objection, Judge, once again, as to the relevance to this proceeding.
I think we did discuss the fact that we're not getting into issues surrounding
Yes, Your Honor.
DWI with respect to what may have happened at headquarters. The court's dealing with the motion to suppress with respect to issues surrounding the stop.
Yes, Your Honor. Officer, after the contraband was found, did you go inside the car to see where it was located?
I did not, no.
Did you see the wallet that was discovered by Patrolman Souls?
Yes.
You look inside the wallet?
Yes, I did.
Did you touch the wallet?
Yes, I did.
What was inside that wallet?
I don't recall everything. I know I found a green card in there, which I photocopied.
You were in charge of this investigation?
No, Truman sold the senior to me.
And then when the detective arrived at the scene, did he take over the investigation?
Yes, he did, along with the sergeant.
And who was that?
Objection, Judge. Again, the issue is whether or not there was an appropriate stop or there was appropriate search. This is not a discovery expedition. Motions to suppress aren't for that purpose.
I'll ask you to stick to the issues at hand, please.
So who was, after you found the contraband, you had the defendant in the back of your unit, correct?
Yes.
And you said that Souls was in charge of the investigation because he's senior, right?
He was the one in the vehicle, yes.
He was more senior to you, so he was in charge of the investigation.
At that time, yes.
When the detective arrived, he took over?
More or less, yes.
Other than the defendant making the left-hand turn because there was a sign there, did he make a left-hand turn in a lawful fashion?
Yes.
The statute that you claim that the defendant violated, 39-4-123, are you aware of what the reading of that statute?
Not by word, no.
Whenever anyone makes a left-hand turn where there's a sign prohibiting it, you issue him that summons, 39-4-123?
I believe the statute states that's an improper left-hand turn, yes.
The manner of making the turn, correct? Not the turn itself.
That intersection prohibits left-hand turns. That's why the summons was issued for a prohibited or improper left-hand turn, yes.
You're absolutely sure that statute that you cited the defendant violating is based on that left turn where there's a sign?
Objection, Judge. As to whether or not this officer knows the verbatim,
He issued the summons, Your Honor.
Judge, and that goes to the issue. of
Well, I'll
whether
allow a
it's
question, overruled.
As to the language of the summons, Judge, I mean, what's next?
I was asking him
Legislative
about the
history?
turn itself. I'll ask, he can ask him about the turn.
Can you rephrase the question? I'm sorry.
Whenever anyone within your jurisdiction makes a left-hand turn where there's a sign prohibiting a left-hand turn,
Okay.
do you issue them this particular statute, this
Yes.
violation? You know of any others that you could write them for?
There's quite a few.
For making a left-hand turn?
That could be construed as careless driving, reckless driving.
For making a left-hand turn?
Sure.
Thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect?
And why would you say that could be careless driving specifically based upon?
There's disobeying traffic signs, causing a traffic hazard,
What's the approximate speed limit in that particular area, Route 23? where
50 miles per hour.
And it's posted no left-hand turn. What's the visibility like, or what's the topography of the road on the side where the defendant cut across?
Keel Ave is 2 lanes. Both lanes have arrows directing traffic across the highway. There's also a double dashed yellow line across the highway. And there are no left-hand turn signs above every traffic signal, and also to the right of the road, there are at least 3 signs that direct traffic to proceed across the highway to make a left or a U-turn.
Do you believe on August the 7th that you gave the appropriate summons for what you observed relating to the left-hand turn?
Yes, I did.
Now, you indicated on cross-examination that the defendant had what you described as a green card,
Yes,
and also you indicated earlier that he had a registration for the automobile.
yes.
I asked that this be marked as State's Exhibit 3 for identification. Officer, I'd ask you to take a look at the photocopies that are depicted on State's Exhibit 3 for identification. Do you recognize those photocopies?
Yes.
And what are they photocopies of?
Of the identification card, or what I thought to be a green card, out of the defendant's wallet, and the registration that he produced.
Who is the car registered to?
Wigder Leasing Corporation, out of Livingston.
And the resident alien car, what's the name and the spelling of the first name on that car?
The first name is Cemal, C-E-M-A-L, last name Alba.
And he had originally told you that it was spelled with a K when you asked for his driving particulars, correct?
Yes.
Did you later learn the status of whether or not the defendant's license had been suspended or whether he had prior driving while intoxicated or driving while revoked?
Objection, Judge. I don't know what relevance that has to this proceeding.
Overruled.
Yes, I have a driver abstract with me.
And what did the driver's abstract indicate that as of August 7th, 1999, the status of the defendant's driving privileges in the state of New Jersey?
It was suspended.
Now, did you receive that information pursuant to a request on the CEMAL, Albert, C-E-M-A-L?
Yes.
Defense counsel was asking you questions about the portion of the evening where you and Patrolman Souls were both at the car. I just wanted to focus you there for a moment. And you indicated that you did not hear or you did not know what Patrolman Souls and the defendant was speaking about. Could you clarify for the court, when you say you don't know, are you referring to a verbatim portion of the conversation or snippets? Could you just clarify for the court what you meant by I don't know?
The verbatim, I did not hear every single word that was exchanged between the driver and Patrolman Souls.
Did you have other responsibilities or focus at that point?
No,
So where were you standing?
at the driver's side.
Was the defendant facing you or facing Patrolman Souls when he was speaking?
We were both speaking to him, so it was going back and forth.
So it's safe to say the defendant was turning his head back and forth when he was
Yes.
speaking? Did there come a time, at some point during the evening, that Patrolman Souls indicated to you, or someone indicated to you, that the defendant had consented for a search or for credentials?
Yes.
And did you include that in your report?
I did not put that I put that he had said that he gave Patrolman Souls the consent to go into his vehicle to look for identification.
And you got that information from either Patrolman Souls or some police officer that evening,
Yes.
prior to preparing your report?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
Yes, Judge. Was a form given to the defendant to sign?
Yes.
Who gave it to him?
I believe Sergeant Card.
What time did he come to the scene?
I don't recall the exact time.
What time did you arrest the defendant?
Again, Judge, subject to the same objection as
Well,
before us.
I don't know if we need to belabor this unless there's some dispute. I mean, there doesn't appear to be any dispute that there was no written consent to search form that occurred during the stop between either Patrolman Souls or Patrolman Findura, that any written consent to search form that was signed was subsequent to the search that was conducted and the arrest. So I don't know if we need to belabor this point. I don't think there's any dispute in that regard.
Well, let me hear him say it. If he agrees, he agrees. So did the search, was the search?
I'm sorry, was counsel speaking to me, Judge? I'm not used to that. Judge,
What I'm saying to you, Mr. Soobzokov, is what is the relevance of this? The written consent to search form is not an issue, is it?
The signing of that form is an issue.
Well, how is it an issue?
Or when it was signed, when he gave permission, allegedly gave permission to search the car.
you can, Patrolman Souls, we can introduce it in evidence, Judge. I have no objection to that. If he wants to do it as a portion of the case, he can do it.
Okay, what I'm saying is, I don't know how this even relates to anything that the court's deciding. All of your arguments in this case have to do with the fact that what occurred at the time that Patrolman Findura and Patrolman Souls were present at the vehicle, and the search that was conducted. Now, it's clear that there was no written consent to search at the time that they allegedly found contraband in the car, correct? That's not an issue, is it?
I want to ask him that, if he agrees to that.
For what reason? What's the relevance of it?
It's a search
If you can
warrant.
articulate to me, I'll certainly allow you to do it, but I need to know what is the relevance of the written consent to search form to this proceeding?
I'd like to ask the police officer those questions, Judge,
Yes, for what purpose? That's what I'm asking.
to establish the timing.
Fine. Can answer the question.
Which question? Time of the arrest?
Well, that was my first question.
Okay, that was at 9:45 PM on August 7th.
Okay. And you indicated a Sergeant Card prepared a permission to search form?
Yes,
Did you sign that form?
yes, I did.
Did you hear Sergeant Card read that form to the defendant?
Yes, I
I'm going
did.
to object again, Judge. We're not relying upon the written consent, Judge. If this is somehow relevant to one of these issues, I thought
What I
the court
said to you,
asked for a
Mr.
reason.
Soobzokov, is I limited you to asking the time of the arrest and the time of the written consent to search. If you want to ask that question, you can answer, he can answer that question. I'm not going to allow, this is not a discovery proceeding, I'm not going to allow questions respecting what he read to him on the written consent to search. It just has no relevance to this proceeding.
Can I just have this mark, Your Honor?
As soon as the clerk comes out, yes. But if you have a question regarding the time, I'll allow you to ask that. Otherwise, you can move on to another line.
Well, I just want him to verify that he signed this form, it's put into the record, that's all.
You can ask him that question.
It's not marked, though. Can we say D1?
That's okay, you ask it, and then we'll have it marked.
I'm going to show you what's a permission to search form. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
Did you sign that?
yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
You can have that marked.
Please mark this.
Do you want?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that the defendant was arrested before he signed that consent to search
This
form?
form, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll take a, you're excused, officer. I'm going to ask you not to discuss your testimony with any other witness during the course of this hearing, okay? We're going to take a brief recess, 10-minute recess. We'll come out and hear the other witness. Okay? All right, will state ready with its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. State calls Patrolman Keith Souls.
Okay. All right, thank you, Colleen.
Officer Souls?
Officer, come right up here. We'll administer the oath to you. Just bear with us for 1 minute. Okay.
Please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. You do swear in the presence of Almighty God that the testimony you're about to give to the court in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Keith Souls, S-O-U-L-E-S.
All right, can I have a seat? May proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. I'd ask you to keep your voice up. This is a taped, audio tape system. By whom are you currently employed?
Butler Police Department,
And in what capacity?
as a patrolman,
And how long have you worked there?
6 years.
And what have your responsibilities been in that time?
I'm currently a patrol officer, a member of the CERT team. I do DARE with the schools. I'm also on the bike patrol unit and a community police officer, a community policing unit.
In the course of your 6 years as a police officer, have you been involved in any investigations relating to controlled dangerous substances?
Yes, I have.
And are you familiar by sight with their packaging and how they may appear?
Yes, I am.
Also, you indicated you'd worked on patrol. Have you been involved in any motor vehicle stops in your career?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many?
1,000.
Now, on August 7th, 1999, were you working?
Yes, I was.
And were you in a marked patrol car?
Yes, I was.
Did there come a time when you received or did you become aware of radio transmissions from Patrolman Robert Fundura of your department?
Yes, I.
What did you do in response to those transmissions?
I went and backed Officer Fundora up.
What time did you arrive backing up Patrolman Fundura?
What time did I arrive? Few minutes, I would say, after he had made the stop. The exact time I'm not aware of.
Would that be in your report?
The exact time?
I'd ask you to refer to a continuation page. That's John, this be Dean Mark States Exhibit 5 for identification?
Mr. Soobzokov have this?
Yes.
It's his report, correct?
You have
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Yes, I have it right here. Approximately 21:40.
And that'd be 9:40 PM.
Yes, it would be.
Now, when you arrived, what did you observe?
Patrolman Fundora, I believe, was talking with the driver of the vehicle.
And that vehicle, what did it look like?
It was a dark color Monte Carlo.
Now, you indicated that Patrolman Fundura was speaking with the driver of that vehicle. On what side of the car was Patrolman Fundura?
On the driver's side,
What side did you go on?
passenger side.
And when you looked into the car, how many passengers or how many occupants were there in the car?
Just one.
And do you recognize the driver of that vehicle in court today?
Yes, I do.
And could you describe him by an article of clothing, please?
Yes, he's wearing a black t-shirt, looks like black jeans, black pants, and white sneakers.
Indicating the defendant, Your Honor?
Son of it.
Now, did you have an occasion to speak with the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court the nature and the contents of that conversation with as much specificity as you recall today?